Hello, dear soul, and welcome to the Lightbearer's Library. In today's journal entry, I want to talk about abandoning books. Now, I think lots of us who read kind of can get this feeling of like once you start a book, you've got to finish the book. And as I've gotten older, I don't subscribe to that at all. And why I'm thinking about this today is because I've decided to abandon a series of 16 books. And I will get into reasons why, but it made me think about why I have abandoned books in the past and why maybe you should abandon a book you're reading right now or a book you might read in the future. And I want to start this conversation off with thinking about the idea and the concept of sunk cost. So a sunk cost is when we've invested time or money, usually, into something. So it could be into, a course, into a relationship, into a product, into a service. We've invested time and money. And so we think we've got to keep going with whatever we've, invested that time and money into, because if we abandon that, course, book, whatever it is, then it kind of feels like, well, I've already put this much in, like I might as well just finish it. But the sunk cost is to say, no, you need to walk away from that thing you've put that time and money into, because there are better things you could be doing with, subsequent time or money. And so it's difficult, it's difficult to do that, because sometimes it's a massive amount of money or a massive amount of time. Like if you think about a relationship that you've, invested a lot of time into, it's like, but it just, it doesn't mean that continuing on in the relationship is going to make it better. Sometimes we just have to, let go of those things. So when we start a book, especially if it's a, big book or a trilogy, or, it can even be like, it can even be like series, like TV shows or a movie. And it kind of feels like, well, I've started it and I've already watched half of it, or I've already read, whatever. Then it's like, then we can feel obligated, or guilty if we stop it, when it's only just us and there's no big deal. So anyway, that's something to think about, sunk cost. And the book series that I was reading was by Robin Hobb. It's the Farseer book series, and there are 16 books in this series. Okay, and they're divided into like usually sets of trilogies, and there's one with like four in it, and I've read one, two, three trilogies, and I started the last trilogy. Well, and then there's a set of 4 books that I haven't read. But so I started this last trilogy, and it got too dark for me. It was kind of like kidnapping, and I was like, I don't want to read about this subject. It's too dark. So that could be one reason why you should abandon. And we can talk about entertainment things here, maybe, like shows or TV shows or movies or books. It's kind of like, if the subject matter is too dark, like abandon it. We don't need to be putting that into our subconscious. Like the world, is going crazy enough. It's dark enough as it is. It's like, we don't need to be adding to that. And kind of going with this is, that's a dark subject matter, but also it can maybe not be dark subject matter, but it just, the book makes us feel bad. For some reason, there could be a character that reminds us of someone in our life that, we don't really want to be dredging up from our memories, or it could be a character that really is, makes us irritated and angry. it's not worth putting that into our mind, and it it makes us kind of maybe irritated with those in our life, or it's not, we don't need to continue reading that book, right? We can put it down. And I think also it's good to be aware of, like, whatever we're reading and we're watching, it's changing our physical body chemistry, like when we're watching and reading something, our mind doesn't know that it's, like, quote unquote fake, or that it's not real. Our mind, if we're watching something or imagining something, our body thinks that it's actually happening and is real. So, we're creating anxiety or tension or fear in our body by watching or reading these scenes and these stories that have all this stuff in them. And that can be fun every once in a while. I know it's like Halloween time, and some people like to watch horror movies and stuff like that. I think you can do that once a year, but I think putting all of that in all the time is not, like, I stopped watching movies and TV shows years ago because it just seemed like everything was getting so much darker and more gruesome, so much killing, and it was just like, you know what, I'm done with all of it. So it's totally okay to abandon books if they make you feel bad. No big deal. Just let it go and find another book. Kind of on that same topic, maybe, is books that are too ideological. I find I like to read a novel to kind of escape the world that we're living in a little bit, like to just have a timeout. And so when authors put ideology into their stories, now, like, obviously art imitates life or whatever, so there's some of that, but sometimes it's just very clear that this book is about what I call programming. Everything we put in our mind, everything we read, everything, all the news, everything we're listening to, it's shifting our perspective. It's programming us to think a certain way or not think a different way. So I always kind of am aware of what messages are going into me. So when I read a book that is clearly trying to tell me to think a certain way, or is, the characters are just like fanatical for a certain topic or ideology that is around today, I'm just like, I don't need the author to tell me, and a lot of this can be more in maybe nonfiction books, especially where it's like a book about something, you pick it up and you think it's about a certain topic, and you're like, oh, I want to read about that topic. And then, like, it becomes clear throughout the book that it's actually pushing a totally different, like, ideology or thought or whatever that has nothing to do with the topic that you wanted to read about. It's like, I don't understand how those two things go together. It's like, that wasn't what was on the tin, as they say. Like, it's like the write-up didn't say it was about that, and then you open it up and it's like, surprise. So I kind of abandoned those books. I'm like, no thank you. And then I guess sort of like lesser things that, well, I mean, they're not necessarily lesser, but I enjoy reading novels that are original. And obviously, stories have themes or archetypal themes that are repeated. But there's clearly, like, say for instance, in fantasy, I know this happens a lot. There's like, a big fantasy series or whatever by one of the big original, or like the big fantasy writers, and it's like a hit, right? And everybody's reading it. And then like a few years later or a year later, there'll be like all these sort of newer writers that kind of mimic that same storyline or kind of way of telling the story or a kind of character or a kind of story. And it just kind of repeats it to get a hit, to have people buy their book. And it's kind of like a variation on a theme. And it's like, I'm not really interested in in reading like like kind of a copycat thing. The same thing happened in music in the 90s, like one of those big bands would have like a hit, and then you'd get sort of smaller bands afterwards kind of making the same kind of song to try and also get a hit. And lots of people enjoy those like, copycats, and that's totally fine. But for me, no, thank you. And I guess the last thing is bad writing. I just, no, thank you. Like, you've got to be able to write a good story. And I think it's almost like how I hear or read bad writing is like it's just trying too hard, and it's kind of like, no. And I remember like there was a book where I really liked the story, and I knew I would like the series. It was a series of books that just went on, and it was kind of like one of the author's earlier writings, and it was good enough that I was like, okay, I know like she's won a bunch of awards, since, and this was one of her older books, so it was like the first in the series, and it's like, I'll just read the first book for the story and then move on into better writing of her later novels. And it's like, so I will read sort of that kind of thing where I know that they've gotten better, and I'll give it a chance. But yeah, it's, sunk cost. And so sometimes, you can be halfway through a book or halfway through a trilogy, and it's kind of like, and I've read, what did I say? 12 of 16 of these Farseer books. And it's just like, I can't read about this kidnapping, like it's too painful and too tense. Like life is tense enough right now that I am not okay with. I can't really bear to be in that intensity of what I know will be all about getting her back in the next 2 books. So, and that will be time that, I will spend reading other books instead. And so lastly, I will leave you with a quote that I think about often is a quote from James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits. I don't think I read the book, but it was one of those big nonfiction books about habits. There you go. But he said, start more books, quit most of them, read the great ones twice. So I think that's such a great way of doing it. There's so many books out there. Just like you could say the same, start more, whatever it is, could be TV shows if that's your thing or whatever, but it's like, start more books. So give more books a chance, start them, and then quit most of them and then read the great ones twice. And I think he's talking mostly about nonfiction, but I think we can add that to fiction as well, because there are so many wonderful fiction books out there, and we should be reading the good ones as opposed to, the semi-good. It's not worth wasting our time on, right? Our time is precious. It's our life. It's our life that we're giving away to these books. And so they might as well be good ones, and they might as well be uplifting us and helping us to become better people. Because that's what fiction can do, right? Make us more empathetic, more aware of different perspectives. And, I think that's really wonderful. So I would love it if you leave me, if you are brave. I know most of us are introverts here, and so commenting can feel a little scary, but if you want to leave me a comment about, some books that you've abandoned, or what you might think about what I've said here and why you choose to abandon books, because I'm sure my list isn't comprehensive. And if not, give me a thumbs up to let me know, you enjoyed this, and subscribe to the Lightbearer's Library. I would love to have you here. Okay, dear soul. Well, I wish you many, many blessings. Signing off for now. XOXO, Kate.